on this week's episode of Tides of Lore.
There's no need for diplomacy. We have steel.
One Quilboar, not scary.
Oh yeah.
20 Quilboar, kind of scary.
His father had once made a promise to the Horde, and that he intends to deliver on that promise as well.
Well, he hasn't thrown anyone off a cliff yet.
Earthbender this, Earthbender that. Shut up.
I think they multiply like rabbits do.
Yep, everyone sure is really dead here.
No, we need more.
Demanding to know if they had already surrendered, promising that even if they had, he would strike them down regardless.
Every episode of Tides of Lore is made possible by our amazing supporters. Thank you so much to Xander Harris, Brock Penrod, The Away Fan, Insulin FTW, Bubba BSE, and Arez Jerry. Your guys' support truly means the world to us, and if you guys would like to join the tide, check us out on YouTube or Patreon. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the 44th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by sometimes a paladin, sometimes a mage. Timothy, how you doing this week, man?
I'm great, man. Sometimes I'm a paladin, sometimes a mage, but all the time I'm not dying in hardcore, baby, because the level 24 on the paladin, 22 on the mage. Last night on the paladin, we're doing a couple things. We're tanking every single dungeon, and we're streaming most of it. Thank you guys for who did tune in. But last night we did Dead Mines and Wailing Caverns on the paladin. Tanked it, and it went smooth as butter. Holy crap! Paladin tank is just too comfy. And then, dude, our group, that's the more fun live streams. It's when me, you, Manny, and Bub. Those are fun. Those are fun streams. We're doing a level bracket challenge where we'll set a bracket. We won't get higher than that. So right now it's 22. So we're waiting for everyone to get to 22, and then we'll do Wailing Caverns. And it's a good time, man. I'm enchanting, so I'm enchanting everyone's gear. You guys are sending me stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's a fun time. I'm really enjoying the hardcore challenges that we got going on right now.
Is that a fucking phone notification I just heard?
Yeah.
Someone shoot this man out of a cannon. Yeah, no, it has been a really good time. I have also hopped on the hardcore train. I don't think we've mentioned this since the last episode, but yeah, I've hopped on the hardcore train looking for something to do in WoW. I was trying to keep up with my mount farming, but yeah, I've grown a bit tired of logging in, doing similar things every day and getting nothing and then leaving. So yeah, I started up, at first it was a rogue, but then our friend Bub wanted to try out shaman with us, so we went horde instead, and I've been having a lot of fun playing the warrior alongside him with the shaman. Been doing all sorts of stuff that I've never done before. I've never tanked in hardcore. I've never tanked in classic.
It's scary.
Never played warrior very seriously. I've never done engineering.
You've never done engineering, and you used to play hardcore all the time?
Hell yeah, I did, brother.
This is your first, dude, and this is why you died all the time.
I mean, most of my high-level characters didn't die, I just stopped playing them. But yeah, I mean, no engineering was going to save me from drowning when I killed that one rogue, and I guess there maybe was something engineering could have done against the other rogue that got killed in, like, the Searing Gorge, but who knows? More than likely what would have helped me is having functioning eyeballs and a few more brain cells.
Yeah, dude. Well, of course that would help, but like training dummies, dude, throwing those down and running away, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I've been up to that. It's been a interesting experience learning warrior and doing that as I've gone along.
Yeah, you're
And
getting
I'm
better.
excited to keep going with that. Things are making a lot more sense, and also I am starting to get the talents and stuff that will allow me to maintain rage as I swap stances, so I think I'll be able to be a bit more active on that front. But yeah, pretty much just hardcore is what we've been up to. We've been live streaming that, like Tim said. If you guys haven't seen over here on the channel, yeah, I think like 4 out of the last 7 days from last week we streamed some hardcore content with Tim here taking the lead. So that's been a lot of fun. But also last week we discussed some stuff about the trolls, you know, Tim's absolute favorite race. Specifically, we discussed Vol'jin, the leader of the Dark Spear, and his best buddy Zalazane. What do you remember about last week, Tim?
I didn't know Zalazane was a friend with Vol'jin, man. It was cool learning about this story. Cool seeing them come up together. They were like best friends growing up, which is crazy. At some point, oh yeah, I remember there Vol'jin like following the Loa, and we didn't really get much information about this Loa, even like what kind of Loa it was. It was just a Loa. So I thought that was kind of weird. But he went on his whole journey. Remind me, how did Zala become bad?
It was a very unconvincing story. I actually just finished editing that one like a few days ago, and it was like literally the story just says, and this comes from one of the later novels where Vol'jin's perspective, and he's just like, I don't know how it happened, but I guess our paths just diverged. And we, like, the story did indicate like the Loa to some degree was kind of putting them on paths that like sent them separate directions, where he was kind of developing this mentality that like maybe the only reason that Vol'jin is rising is because I am being stepped on to get there. So yeah, that's kind of how it all happens. And then he starts raising zombie people and creating thralls of the Darkspear, and that's not very cool.
Yeah, and that's when we have to go to that island and put him down. Echo Isles. Take his skull from his corpse.
Which we find out is just a bunch of rocks. Magically changing back later until Cataclysm, where you actually have one Samdi show up to blow this man into pieces.
Oh yes, we didn't actually kill him. I remember us talking about that. Yeah, because he played a trick on our mind.
Yep. So that was most of that story. I mean, the major thing is kind of Vol'jin becoming a shadow hunter, and like you did mention with the Loa, I was kind of thinking about it because like the first Loa kind of appears to them after they're like exhausted after fighting the raptor, so maybe that was like the raptor Loa that we eventually meet in Zuldazar. And then one of his other challenges is basically him to chop off one of his fingers, right? So maybe that challenge was like the regeneration Loa that we also meet in like Cataclysm. So I was thinking about that a bit more as I was editing it, but I definitely couldn't find anything for sure being like, oh yeah, it's for sure this one or that one. It just, some of them say they're more familiar than others. But that is pretty much all we got. And yeah, if you guys haven't checked out that episode, check it out. It's a good episode. I think it was a lot of fun. And we get Bon Samdi, who I love.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. They need to use him more. They kind of they do that with all characters. They make a cool character and then we're just not going to talk about him for 5 expansions.
All right. Yeah, that is unfortunately the truth when it comes to most of the cool characters. And then they're just like, here, they're a raid boss now. And you're like, no, I didn't ask for this. But also last week, we had a few comments from you guys. And while we are changing up the format for our commenting stuff, we're going to try something new this episode where I'm going to choose a comment to review, and Tim has chosen a comment to highlight. Tim, would you like to go ahead and highlight your comment?
Oh, my boy Xander. Shout out to Xander Harris, by the way, always stopping in on the streams. But he said, proud of y'all getting that 1K. Don't slow down. Y'all amazing. Hoping y'all make a Discord or guild for both sides. And that's what I wanted to talk about. If we were going to make a guild, I want to know, would it A, be on retail, or B, be on like classic or hardcore classic? There's just so many different versions of WoW. And if we were retail, you can actually have Alliance and Horde in the same guild. But yeah, I want to know your guys' thoughts, or both. I mean, I guess we could do, all versions. I do play, and Rob plays pretty much every version. So
yep. I mean, for my input on that, I do feel like it maybe should be retail. I don't know how much of our fan base really plays retail. At least from our streams, a lot of people show up, play classic, but that kind of makes sense because they're playing classic. But with, retail is obviously a bit more long lasting than classic. Classic tends to have servers constantly shifting and stuff like that. And
right.
We also tend to hop between hardcore, and I mean, we haven't really hopped on our actual classic characters in
I do
2 months, so
I do.
I haven't. So yeah, that is where my mind's kind of at for that. But yeah, I definitely am curious what you guys are thinking for that as well. So go ahead and let us know. I'm thinking we're gonna have that be a free tier for our Patreon, where you sign up for the free tier on the Patreon and you can get a access code to the Discord or the guild or something like that, and we can hopefully start setting up some more widespread group activities. But for me, I had to highlight. Our returning fan, as always, the away fan himself, saying, I really enjoyed the bit about the red tunic lore dude. It's very cool that they add real life events into the game. This episode as a whole was solid. Not really a fan of Moira personally. Congrats on 1K and subscribe to the Patreon, y'all. Obviously, you want to listen to the away fan there on that last sentence. He really knows what he's talking about, being one of the loyal Patreon subscribers that we have. But yeah, I actually think it's one of my favorite parts about the Warcraft lore and why I try and highlight it as much as we do. I mean, there are probably plenty of things that I've missed and a handful of things that I've intentionally left out because not everyone at Blizzard is looked upon so highly these days. Like the Captain Bridenbrad questline or the Crusader Bridenbrad questline from back in Wrath of the Lich King, where we discussed how that pertained to real life. I really liked how that all meshed together as well. But you were saying
He also said he didn't like Moira. I'm gonna comment Time Lost Crow, talking about it's a matter of perspective, right? Is Moira good? Is she bad? But she does have some traits that just doesn't seem likable, you know?
Yeah, I did actually end up running a poll over on the Spotify episode because we do, like every episode, you have the option to run a poll. So I did run one for that episode, and I asked, is Moira evil? And I gave 3 options of yes, no, and it is not that simple. And we only had 1 vote who said it is not that simple.
What was the... Wait, 1 vote overall? For the entire... Oh,
yep.
Okay.
100-0.
Yeah, it's not that simple.
Yep. So the people have voted. I'm going to try and include more. So if you're over on Spotify and you want to interact with us a bit more, vote on the poll. But yeah, that is pretty much all that we had from last week. And this week it's time to get back to Tim's other favorite race, the Tauren.
Wow, I didn't know they have enough to put in a whole episode. Crazy.
Hey Tim, did you know the Tides of Lore is a Patreon now?
Oh yeah? What do I get if I throw some support on Patreon?
You'll get ad-free episodes, a member shout-out, live stream access, and exclusive VODs, the full package.
So basically, skip the ads, get your name in the show, and help us keep telling Warcraft stories?
Exactly. Join the Tide at patreon.com/tidesoflore. We have the story opening with this rickety cart carrying water that has these 2 orcs and this goblin that are doing their best to escort it, where the goblin is trying to tell these 2 orcs, like, hey guys, we definitely need a bigger escort to get through these lands. It's dangerous out here these days. And the orcs are obviously like, I'd like to see somebody try. I would fuck them up right quick. And he's just like, I don't know about that. But, you know, obviously they're swinging their weapons around and they're like, oh yeah, I'm that guy. And then all the bushes around them begin trembling. And they get noticeably a bit more tense and a bit more uncomfortable with the situation as the ground begins to rumble and shake as well. And as this wave of motion begins pouring through the hedges in front of them, shaking every branch and leaf, the warrior instincts within them seems to shatter as they do their best, both switching mindsets, one of them doing their best to run, the other doing their best to fight. The one doing his best to fight is immediately came upon by dozens of armed Quilboar bursting from this undergrowth. And he gets about 2 of them down before he is put to the ground himself. And the other is disoriented and caught, and they just start swinging wildly at him before eventually catching him in the head as well, where the other orc dies. And this goblin is like, well, not waiting for y'all. Getting out of here. So he hops atop his Kodo with its water, and he's like, ka-chow. And he goes to Lightning McQueen out of there. And, well, he catches a spear pretty quickly to the back and dies. And then when this Kodo eventually does reach its destination, it's found completely ransacked and looted with the corpse of the goblin still pinned atop it. And that's where we come to Baine Bloodhoof.
The eyes of the Earth are upon us.
Who has chosen in the past, however long since the Shattering novel, not to pursue vengeance against Garrosh Hellscream, instead choosing to try and preserve the fragile stability that is the Horde by supporting Garrosh's leadership and doing his best to lead the Tauren people for, well, the first time in his life as well. But, well, Garrosh Hellscream arrives in Thunderbluff. And it's clear that any of the wisdom, let's say, that he might have gained in the time after killing Cairn and realizing the treachery of Magatha and everything that he played a part in that regard, well, that's gone and dead and burst into flames, apparently, because he arrives in Thunderbluff and his entrance is anything but quiet as he basically arrives in this big triumphant parade and demands rather than compromises with anything that Baine and his second in command, Archdruid Hamuul Runetotem,
Nature seeks balance in all things,
have to say about the situation, as he realizes that this is no mere conversation, that it is a pivotal moment for both the Horde survival and his people as a whole.
So Garrosh killed Baine's father and then walks in like he owns the place and doesn't even give him the time of day.
Yeah, well, you're about to see. You're about to really get into just how much this
It's just,
this has been going down.
So how does the guilt, because he had some guilt, how does it go away that quickly?
He did.
How does it go away that quickly? I don't understand.
And I don't really either. We actually kind of discussed this, I believe, last night on one of our streams with a viewer.
Yeah.
And we were talking, or like, did they assassinate Garrosh's character? And I'm like, I think where he ends up is a logical story arc. I think it just took too many leaps to get to where it did. And I think this is maybe one of those times where it is a leap, where it was like, you know, you had a character that was complex, or more complex than we are being presented here, where he is like really struggling with what he had done to Cairn and how it had, you know, basically been a ruse and he had been conned into doing it. But yeah, and then you get to this point in the story and he's just like, I don't care. Oopsies.
Maybe
oh well.
He just loves the thirst of power so much that he doesn't care. I don't know. Or
Not sure.
He has
Let's
an
see, shall we?
idea of what the Horde could be and he won't let anything stop
I think he
him.
just has, and we will see that, but I think it's just that he has like this idea of what the Horde is and what it needs to be, and he accepts nothing except that. And
Right.
even if, well, there are times where he's wrong, because everyone's wrong sometimes, except for Malfurion's Storm Rage.
Dude, even you said it the other night. Malfurion is boring, dude. Nobody cares. It's like
I know, I'm just
Superman,
fucking with
dude.
you.
Nobody cares about Superman.
But yes, normally known for his calm and wisdom and his quiet demeanor, Archdruid Hamuul Runetotem is raising his voice, yelling as he spirals at Garrosh's brashness and obstinance, in which, of course, Garrosh does nothing besides recklessly stir in fury back at the druid. And Baine thinks about the situation. He's like, you know, it's kind of crazy, because Hamuul's actually the one that even opened up talks with Garrosh about helping them solve their problems with getting water. And here he is, screaming at the guy that's trying to get it done. Come on, Garrosh. Let's have some clarity here, brother. But Baine does his best to just remain steady and stoic as the two argue amongst one another, where eventually he asks Garrosh, he's like, so you need water, right? You have problems getting water. Last time I checked, there's a massive river that flows right next to Orgrimmar, coming down from Ashenvale and Ajara. Why can't you drink that water? What's wrong with that water? And Garrosh is like, so here's the thing. When I gave the goblins Ajara to go and start building on and doing what they will, as you might imagine, the goblins tend to create a little bit of waste. And while they're creating these weapons of war for me, it kind of polluted the water maybe a little bit. And Baine obviously hears this, and he's just like, okay, so, like, why don't you tell them to stop, and then, like, maybe get some shamans or something up in there, and you can heal that water, and then you can just drink that water. And Tim, how does Garrosh respond to this?
Stop? No, we need more. And he bet he throws him off a cliff.
Oh, fuck me, man. You're almost so, like, I think that's almost an exact quote. Stop? Yeah. He's just like, no, I'll have nothing stopping the Horde war machine. You will provide water because you have plenty to give. It's fresh and you draw from wells all the time. And once again, him and Hamuul start beefing and getting into it as Baine does his best to try and figure out a solution for this situation. And he does think for a moment, and eventually he goes, okay, so here's my solution for it. We will provide Orgrimmar with water from our wells. If you make it so that anytime the goblins are doing these projects now, you can have a Tauren who's overseeing them to help to, make sure that this sort of stuff doesn't happen. And Garrosh just goes and leaves out the door while saying, I will have my water. You're right about that.
Baine was...
So yeah, I think we've come...
If he was an orc, I think these conversations would go differently.
Where are the orcs, right? Like, where are the intelligent orcs? Where's Eatrig right now being like, hey man, maybe you should, where were the people that watched another entire planet get destroyed? Who are there still? And
Garrosh would probably throw him in a prison underneath Orgrimmar if anyone said anything.
Congratulations, you've been promoted to experiment. But yes, as Baine and Hamuul rub their heads just being like oof, oof, oof about it, eventually water caravans soon become a familiar sight moving across Mulgore, drawn by Kodos hauling these massive water skins across the plains. And the orcs once again taste fresh and clean water in their homes, and the shipments, don't last very long before you run into the logical problem that you would in a drought that is, pretty extensive across all of Kalimdor. Bandit raids coming after your water. And though few would succeed, overall the system of getting water from Mulgore to Orgrimmar was fairly successful. But that illusion of overall structure and safety is pretty quickly shattered when a caravan is ambushed within Mulgore itself. And Baine's thinking, this is insane. How is this even possible? I was in my homeland when they committed this violence. Who could have possibly done this thing? Well, that's when they look at the cart and they're like, actually, something's weird here. No one looted these bodies. They're still all glowing with that golden glow that they have. They still have loot. And he's like, this doesn't make any sense. And they go to follow some of these blood trails that suggest some of these bodies had been dragged away. And they locate their bodies, but even still, they have not been looted. They have just been pointlessly brutalized. And Baine's like, who would commit such an atrocious action against the Tauren in this time? The Grim Totem, obviously. Those dang filthy Grim Totem. Magatha and her...
Magatha's still out and about?
Magatha is still alive, but I guess I'll just spoil it. The Long Walkers that he has, doing the investigation for this, find no evidence pointing to Grim Totem involvement.
Orcs.
So as this orcish messenger arrives, interrupting Baine's brooding, he has tidings from Orgrimmar, unrolling this letter, and it's from Garrosh Hellscream, and obviously it's like, hey, shithead, the water that you sent me was tainted. I expect this problem to be fixed. Next order, it better be. And it almost carries a tone of accusation as though Baine had failed in his duty. And Baine's like, okay, well, with that being the case, go ahead and tell Garrosh that we're going to handle this. I know which well that came from, and I'm not going to have my people's honor being questioned like that. So I'm going to go check that out. You can tell him that I'm going personally to handle it. And the messenger's like, okay. And he legs it. Again, I imagine for some reason that messengers don't take flight paths. I just like imagining this guy running. As eventually Baine does arrive at the Winterhoof well where the waterhead came from. And he looks around and he's like, yep, everyone sure is really dead here. 3 caravans of water lay smashed beyond repair, and their water bladders and kodos have notably been stolen. As he looks around the wreckage, he finds 8 of the guards that had fallen in a defensive ring doing their best to protect the workers. But in front of them, he finds the answer to who had committed all of this as he sees a dozen Quilboar corpses. Those dang Quilboar. I can't take Quilboar seriously. I mean, I guess I kind of will by the end of this story, but...
They need to be purged, man. Name me one good thing a Quilboar's ever done.
No, those were Furball, you're right. I can't.
Yeah. They're like Trogs. Trogs need to be eliminated as...
Tim's making a list.
Yeah.
But yes, as he examines these fallen enemies, he notices something unsettling about these, that they were way better armored than ever before and way better armed than ever before. Their patchwork gear, brandishing stolen Horde insignias, noting that this was way more organization that he has normally ever seen amongst these chaotic tribes, and questioning if it was some possible new leadership that has been uniting all of these Quilboar. But determined to avoid violence, thinking about what would Papa do. He orders his Long Walkers to go send word to Camp Narachi, instructing them to attempt to contact the Quilboar of the Brambleblade Ravine, looking to resolve it before any more slaughter needed to be dealt out. Thinking that sort of path would only bring ruin to Mulgore in this time where everything is already kind of going to shit. And he's like, oh yeah, and let Garrosh know that that's the plan too. And Tim, how does Garrosh respond to this?
Throw someone off a cliff.
Yeah, Garrosh reply comes pretty quickly, and it's just, no, you're not going to talk to them. I'm sending troops. We're marching immediately. We're going to expel the Quilboar. We're going to secure these lands completely. There's no need for diplomacy. We have steel. And Baine, if you don't get it handled before we get there, don't you worry. I will handle it myself. And Baine reads this and he's just like, yeah. Anyway, I'm standing firm on my decision. We're trying to pursue negotiation first. There is no need for military operations. You can tell Garrosh that too. Quote me on that one.
Why doesn't he want military operations?
Well, he just doesn't think that a war within Mulgore is the right play right now. And the next morning, a Long Walker enters Baine's quarters and he's like, hey man, we've attempted to end the violence. Every single time we've attempted to talk with them, they've attacked us pretty mindlessly almost, and we didn't even fight them then. We did our best to retreat and, defend ourselves. We lost a few dudes, but they really don't seem interested in talking. And Baine's like, okay, well, don't try and talk with them for right now. Let's see if we can figure out what is making them so feral. Just make sure you hold the border between our lands and theirs, and I will figure this out. Because yes, Tim just mentioned, why does he not want this? Well, even this exact moment, he thinks about it, where he's like, the Alliance and Horde are once again flaring up their battles, and that's starting to, spark up all across the world, and there's internal strains that are plaguing the Horde between the Darkspear and Garrosh and me and Garrosh, and all sorts of crazy stuff that's going on in that regard. And he thinks the last thing that we need in the middle of a drought, in the middle of all of that, is more fighting. And that's where you cut to another scene, where late night at Camp Narachi, you have several of the Tauren gathering around their fire, beginning to share their fears, as lately the Quilboar attacks have escalated and gotten more and more violence, and Mulgore's precious water was being drained away more and more to support distant lands, as an elder begins voicing his frustration, claiming that Baine is yielding far too much to Garrosh's demands and completely giving over the Tauren's lifeblood to the orcish needs without even questioning theirs. And everyone's like, grumble, 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 he's right, grumble, grumble, so on and so forth. Where one of these younger one, he's like, so have you spoken with anyone else? Like, have you gotten their opinion? And he's like, yeah, but certain of these other tribes, they just don't see it. I don't know how they don't see it, but they got those rose tinted glasses on. So they don't see the cracks that are beginning to show in Baine's leadership. And he just thinks, he's like, under Cairn's legacy, this never would have happened.
Well, then maybe don't kill the guy.
But I guess that continues to build their resentment for Orgrimmar, right? And why Baine is doing what he's doing, and how he can kind of see that, how they can see that line being drawn from Baine to Garrosh too. But one of these voices does eventually rise up in defense of Baine, saying that he would never betray his people's best interests, as the others begin to, once again, grumble, 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 maybe grumble, grumble, I don't know. Someone does bring up the fact, he's like, we weren't always these people that just remained in Mulgore and lived here forever. We once roamed the lands, we were nomads, and sure, the safety of Mulgore has provided us just that safety, but we've lost maybe our ancestral way of life. Maybe we should return to being nomads like that. And seeing no perfect solution forward, they just kind of silently come to a disagreement, as there is no clear path that has emerged, but this growing sense that Baine's leadership is faced with, not just from the outside, but also from within. But elsewhere, you obviously got Baine. He's still focusing on his problem, Quilboars. And they're constantly being attacked now. Like we mentioned, the attacks have ramped up recently. And though he does have a pretty sizable force maintaining the borders, attacks do occasionally slip through, and they have grown bolder and more numerous. When he eventually is like, I know who I need to talk to about this. Hey, Hamuul. And Hamul's probably picking some peace bloom out in Mulgore or something. I don't know what he does in his free time. And he's like, what's up? He's like, I need your guidance, brother. And he's like, I feel like something has like changed, like internally in Mulgore, like in the air. I feel it on the wind. And Hamul's like, I think you might just be spitting there, my guy. Maybe if you go and like hit up a few shamans and do your magic druid Cenarian circle thingy, you can figure out what's going on. And Hamul's like, you're spitting bars, Baine. You really are. So Hamul's like, all right, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go talk with my people. I'll get back to you. And he's like, thanks. I really appreciate you. They probably do the predator, what is it called? Like dap up? I don't know.
Or when the meme of those two muscular guys.
It's literally from Predator. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger
really?
and the other lead guy, yeah.
I didn't know that's from Predator.
Yeah. You son of a bitch. But yes, as Hamuul wanders off, Baine remains behind, clouded by doubt, thinking about his father's passing and how he is this young chieftain that is doing everything that he can for his people. And he does begin to question even within himself, like, if Karen was here, would my people be in this situation? And he looks over to the right and he sees this group of far wanderers, which is this tribe of Tauren that we actually were talking about over at the campfire earlier. And it looks like they've made their decision. They're packing up supplies. They're getting their Kodo ready to leave. And Baine's like, hey, what's going on, guys? You guys going on a trip or something? They're like, oh, Baine, yeah, we're going on a trip. I don't know how to break this to you, man. Let me just keep it 100. We don't know if staying here is a good idea. We're considering moving and becoming nomads again, somewhere where we'd be out of the reach of Garrosh's demands. And Baine's like, come on now, guys. Like, now more than ever, we need unity. This will help to get us through these times, through this challenge. We need unity. And they're just like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, the world is vast out there. And Baine counters, he's like, the world is not so vast and empty anymore. Like, it's scarred by conflict and expansion and conquest, and the Tauren could not just drift endlessly as they once had, and their survival now would depend on holding this homeland and standing united as a people. And that's when the elder of their tribe just speaks bitterly straight up to Baine, saying, Mulgore has become just an extension of Garrosh's will. Its waters drained, its people yoked to the orcs' arrogance. And he says, I had a lot of respect for your father, but that does not mean that I owe my everything to the Horde. And this burden has become too much to bear. And he basically is just like, this isn't in defiance of you. This isn't just because I'm trying to teach you a lesson, but this is a despair of what I fear Mulgore has become and is becoming. And once again, Baine meets his lament with a single firm declaration that the Horde is greater than any single leader. And though Baine speaks with conviction, they remain unmoved, and with a polite finality, they just say, as you say, High Chieftain, and they begin continuing to prepare for their journey as Baine makes his way back to the lifts of Thunder Bluff. The elder of these far wanderers looks to his tribe and says, well, it's still going to take a little bit of time to prepare for this journey, so maybe things can go better than we even know. Who knows, right?
Hey, you know how you're always telling people to listen to Tides of Lore?
Of course, I am my own biggest fan.
Well, now it's even easier. We're on Apple Podcasts, Audible, CastBox, Spotify, and YouTube.
So I can tell them, wherever you listen, that they can just hit subscribe or follow?
Exactly. No matter where you are, Azeroth Stories will find you.
And that is where several days later you return to Hamuul Runetotem, visiting Baine and being like, hey man, brought my friend. And Baine turns and looks at him and he's like, oh, what's up? Who's this? And he's like, this is Swart. He's the shaman class trainer over in Razor Hill. And Baine's like, oh, sick. I've always wanted to meet you. And the orc's like, me too. And they also probably do the predator dap up scene or something like that.
2 Taurens doing that would cause an earthquake.
But yes, he's like, nice to meet you. Is there any good news about the Quilboar conflict? And Hamuul smiles at him and he's like, I got, some promising news. And Baine's like, good. I always suspected that there would be a way to reason with the Quilboar, even if my father, actually before me, had never really tried to pursue it like that. And Hamuul reveals through that he and Swart had been through this deep meditation, seeking the Earth Mother's wisdom, and through that they believed that they had discovered the true source of the disturbance that was driving the Quilboar. And he turns to his companion for him to speak, and Swart begins to tell him, he's like, yeah, so their tribes are built on this hierarchy, right? And they got these really cool dudes, these magical, mystical people known as the Water Seekers. Right, these individuals that are magically able to sense underground springs, and they guide their people to it to, sustain themselves. As you might have noticed, ain't fuck all for water around lately. So these powers have begun to fail them, and due to this, these Quilboar are becoming desperate and lashing out in a desperate attempt to find water. And that's why they're raiding into our territory and retreating so safely back into their homes after they do it. And Baine's like, interesting. Okay, cool. So what's the plan? And Hamuul smiles and he's like, I think I know a thing or two about talking with nature. So we'll see if we can't solve that. And Baine's like, okay, cool. That sounds great. Let me tell Garrosh. And he's like, okay, cool. Eventually Garrosh is like, really? That's what you think the plan is? Okay. Give me 3 minutes on this flight path. I'll be right there. And eventually they meet up with the Warchief, where he comes in and they speak to him directly, explaining what they had uncovered, this critical information that has, led to this instability of the water shipments and everything like that. And he explains that if they were to just figure out a way for them to share more water with the Quilboar, then the Quilboar would probably stop attacking them, and we would no longer have these issues with the scarcity of the resource. And we would probably stop having to deal with these tainted water shipments as well. And how does Garrosh respond to this, Tim?
Well, he hasn't thrown anyone off a cliff yet, so I assume he just comes down there himself and says, we're doing it my way, baby.
Yeah, so actually, unfortunately, just as he's about to speak, another young Tauren messenger bursts into the door and is like, hey, there's been another raid on the water and equipment by the Quilboar. And Baine calmly is just like, okay, I'll handle it when I'm done here. And yeah, Garrosh just explodes. Furiously pacing the chamber, he begins just ripping into Baine, and the Tauren being like, that's 3 attacks this week. It's inexcusable. You've had your time to do your little weakness strategy. It's time to go in there and show them peace through steel, if I guess you want to call it that.
A war starts.
And initially Baine tries to remind him. He's like, I should remind you, like, this is still our land. Mulgore is still our land, insisting that the Tauren are people to follow the Earth Mother's guidance, not just your reckless violence. And it's not that reckless violence that's going to solve this conflict. And Garrosh once again explodes as he's like, ooh, Earth Mother this, Earth Mother that, shut up.
Did he outlaw shamanism? Because orcs are shamans too, dude.
He didn't outlaw shamanism, but he does just dismiss their worshipping of the Earth Mother as nothing more than a crutch for indecision. As his hands fly up in the air, he rages, saying that the Horde needs action, not prayers to some deity. And Baine and Hamuul are both like, look, man, like, you may not believe it, but the Earth Mother is the guiding voice for all the Tauren people. It is the wisdom of Azeroth itself to us. So, talk your shit, but we know better. And Garrosh is obviously completely unmoved. And he's like, you know what? I told you that I was going to handle it. So I think I'm just going to handle it. And with a calm determination, Baine tries to urge Garrosh to respect the Tauren way, but he explains that this Quilboar aggression has smelted away any opportunity for peace, and now the only option left is violence. And though Baine did everything he could to counsel for peace, Garrosh's fury could not be contained, and he finds himself staring at his legendary mace that was entrusted to him by Anduin, Fearbreaker, and he's like, well, I guess if he's set on this way, we'll still try and solve it our way first, but call up the Sunwalkers, which is this group of Tauren paladins. Interestingly enough, we discussed a little bit about their connection to the light last episode. And he's like, you're probably going to go have to defend the Warchief because I think he's going to go and attack the Quilboar. So call them up. And that night, Baine finds himself pacing restlessly around his tent, thinking about how his insistence on a peaceful solution had only led to more attacks and greater bloodshed, and now even the Warchief's life could questionably be in danger, as he thinks that Garrosh is underestimating the capabilities of these Quilboars, thinking that he hasn't played hardcore enough and he doesn't understand what getting stuck in a cave against them could mean.
They have strength in numbers, let me tell you. Yeah, 1 Quilboar, not scary.
Oh, yeah.
20 Quilboar, kind of scary.
Yep. And he begins to think perhaps the Far Wanderers are right to leave. Perhaps the Horde had changed too much since Cairn's time, and for the first time, Baine begins to voice his fear that he could not lead his people, or maybe that he should not be the one to lead his people. But Hamuul's like, hey man, I was just about to head out, but don't be acting like that. I promise you, I saw Cairn. I was by his side for many, many years, and I can promise you, you are every bit the leader that Cairn has been, and you are guided by the same wisdom instead of rashness. And he confessed that, even earlier in his life, he had been not the biggest fan of Baine becoming leader, but he can see it now that Baine was a leader, even if he can't see it himself in this moment. And he hits him with that thumbs up and probably shifts into bird form and flies away. Because that's where we cut to. Garrosh talking in front of a crowd of orcs. And he's like, these Tauren, they like to go for the baby strategy and do the talky talk. We're not for that anymore. Our water supply is being endangered by some filthy Quilboar. We're going to kill the Quilboar. And these 40 Kor'kron that are standing in front of him are like, yeah, death to Quilboar, fuck the Quilboar. And he's like, let me lay it out in clarity. They got these dens in the south of Mulgore. We're going to go there. We're going to strike the den shortly before dawn. And you guys are my elite squad, so I'm expecting the best out of you. And with that swift, hard strike, the enemy would know fear, and we would disassemble any sense of hierarchy that they would have left. And, well, that's when immediately in the next scene, just before dawn, these zeppelins slide silently across the skies of Mulgore, carrying the Kor'kron, this elite, lethal force cloaked in shadow, as they just descend the ropes nearly atop the unsuspecting Quilboar patrols, and their blades flash in a blur as 10 Quilboar fall dead before a cry could even be raised. And though one squeal escaped, drawing the reinforcements from the entrance, they too were slain, as in the moments the Kor'kron's axes and swords tore through their ranks with precision, and they advanced further into the burrows, leaving nothing alive in their wake. And like Tim just mentioned, inside the burrows, the Quilboar reveal their true strength, defending their home with savage zeal, using every corner of their tunnels to their advantage, their tusks, their claws, their sheer ferocity to surprise the battle-hardened Kor'kron. And for every Quilboar that fell, another would surge forward, fearless of death. And then Garrosh obviously is standing there, smiling, basking in the bloodshed as Gorehowl strikes down foe after foe, screeching through the air as he swings it, and to him the zeal of the Quilboar only makes their defeat more satisfying. And that's where, after minutes of this fighting, Garrosh and the Kor'kron find themselves in this main chamber of this burrow, Gorehowl covered in blood, its edge completely soaked as he raises it high in triumph, the chamber littered with bodies, and the silence. He holds up Gorehowl, letting out a cry of victory, where that silence that follows the echoes of it is broken by only the labored breaths of his warriors, and they look around the room trying to decide, which one of these tunnels should we go down next? Which one could possibly have the most Quilboar to slay? And that's when they hear something shifting from behind them. And the faint echo of movement, they turn, weapons ready, preparing for a fight. And they face the tunnels that are behind them, only find it completely filled to the brim, completely choked
with Quilboar reinforcements, the beasts hesitating to move forward as they survey the dozens of corpses laying below Garrosh's feet. And Garrosh howls at them, declaring that they would pay for their defiance and that the Horde's wrath would fall upon them. And he signals for the Kor'kron to rush forward as a hail of axes begin rushing forward into the crowded tunnels as dozens of squeals echo into the caverns, yet the Quilboar refuse to advance. And Garrosh roars in frustration, demanding to know if they had already surrendered, promising that even if they had, he would strike them down regardless. And at that time, one of these Quilboar raises its arms and lets out a piercing squeal, and the cavern's walls trembles and split open as tons of more tunnels appear, holes bursting from the roof, releasing hundreds and hundreds of Quilboar into the fray, the beast pouring forward like a living flood, threatening to cut off every escape Garrosh has as he begins to roar commands at his warriors, doing his best to hold off all of his flanks that he can. And the Kor'kron, disciplined, find themselves still strained under the relentless onslaught. And they do their best to press forward, but despite this, the Quilboar push back with unyielding ferocity, and flashes of lightning and thunderous roars come striking in as they realize that even amongst the ranks of the Quilboar, they have spellcasters, and the weight of their survival presses heavily on Garrosh's shoulders as he begins to see just how perhaps unwinnable this battle truly is. Despite this whirling gore howl with a furious speed, Garrosh filling the air with its unearthly howl, and the sound reverberating down the tunnels, the cry of it being answered by the screech of the Quilboar just the same. And he eventually finds himself getting pushed back further and further, lower and lower into the tunnels, until he can't see the surface from the light at all, and he finds himself standing alone in the dark, all of the torches that his men had been carrying snuffed out, as all of them have now been slain by the onslaught of Quilboar, and he finds himself with his back against the wall, alone facing them. And yeah, well, I mean, he gets in there. He just begins slaughtering through these Quilboar, the flood of them pressing against him tighter and tighter, their hot breath and triumphant squeals all around him. And he finds himself just swinging and swinging, and he barely notices the exhaustion on his body. Like, he even mentions it like it's just a side thought of the exhaustion of having ripped through what I can imagine is hundreds of these dudes at this point. And eventually he goes to swing Gorhal, and it gets stuck in the stone, and he tries to drag it free, but he can't get it out. As they begin rushing forward at him, he doesn't see any option. He abandons the weapon, rushing forward, ripping one of the spears from the Quilboar in front of him. He just begins slaughtering them with their own weapons. He says that at a certain point, he literally can't see anything. He is just feeling weapons enter his hand, and he slays whatever comes into it. And that's when he begins to see a light. This radiant light blazes through all the caverns that seems to scatter a bunch of these Quilboars as their squeals begin to echo throughout the tunnels, and he sees a bunch of them begin to turn and flee, a bunch getting thrown to the side like rag dolls by an unforeseen force. And as it comes around the bend, the source of this brilliance is revealed, and it is, of course, Baine Bloodhoof, Hamuul Runetotem, and a regiment of the Sunwalker Paladins.
That's how I imagine them coming in.
By God, it's Baine Bloodhoof with a steel chair! Dun, 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 dun. But yes, as Baine makes his way forward, this light gets ever brighter towards Garrosh as they rush to his side, hauling him to his feet, and together they wrench Gorhal free from the crack in the wall, urging that they have to get to the surface, otherwise they would be stuck down here and all would be lost. And as they make their way back into that same massive cavern that Garrosh had been in before, Hamuul touches the ground looking to find guidance for which is the correct tunnel to get them out of there, when eventually the cavern's wall erupt violently, spraying stone and dust as the company whirls to face the onslaught, and they just find that amongst this rubble, this is no simple Quilboar raiding party. And I did want to just quote this section, because I don't think we've ever actually seen this character, and I have a few ideas of what this sort of thing could be, but let me read you this description of this horde of Quilboar that appear. And it says, Quilboar, far larger than normal and exceptionally pale began surrounding the gathered fighters. As they moved, unnaturally high-pitched sounds escaped from their mouths, piercing the fighters' ears. Their bodies were ashen white and covered in sickly dark green spiny quills, with large bulging eyes protruding from their heads. They stood a full head taller than any other Quilboar ever seen by the Tauren or any other race, and their intelligent malice in their eyes showed that they were far more capable than their brethren who had so recently fallen before the onslaught of Baine, Hamuul, and the Sunwalkers. What
That's
the
terrifying.
fuck is this thing, dude? What is this Wendigo-ass thing that has appeared? Whoa. But this is very old gaudy, right? Like, this very much reminds me of the pale orcs that you find in the caves under Nagrand that had, you know, seen the void and stuff like that. This feels very much like that. But when I tried to figure it out, because I'm like, the Quilboar have gotten up to a lot of stuff, which is why when you're like, have the Quilboar ever done anything good? I looked into it pretty extensively. I found a whole lot of different bad things that they've done. Like, you see them in the Razorfen Downs and stuff like that, do some necromancy and stuff like that. But I never saw anything too Old God related. But that's very much the vibe that this gives me, at least these creatures. And then they disappear from the story forever.
Old God makes me think of tentacle monsters, insects. I don't know.
Eyeballs.
Yeah, but it's just because they have bigger eyeballs doesn't mean they're good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting little tidbit that they add here. I'm just surprised that I don't think we ever see it. But to continue forward, as Garrosh is like, what the fuck is that thing? And Baine just goes, bro, I wish that I even knew. Baine raises his hand and commands everyone that we're not getting out of here if we fight. We need to run. So Garrosh is like, nah, running's for pussies. And as he's saying this, Hamuul creates this wall of plants that lead from where they are to the surface. And he's like, follow that. It'll take you up. And they all just begin booking it. It even says that Baine drags Garrosh as he's screaming behind him, you know, like a toddler. But the company eventually does burst into the morning air as Hamuul's spell begins collapsing behind them and the root decays, and these ashen Quilboar begin pouring forth their twisted forms, blinking rapidly in the daylight. Garrosh turns to hold the exit with his axe at the ready, but Baine's like, hold on. We think we got a better solution, one that you chose to ignore. Remember that. And Hamuul, show him the blessings of the Earth Mother. And Hamuul channels a spell and begins casting. And eventually he drives his staff into the earth, where his power radiates outwards and the ground shakes as light erupts from the soil, vines lashing upward, and the air itself shimmers with druidic power. And this flow of water just begins pouring into the Quilboar's tunnel. And Baine and Hamuul basically tell them, they're like, hey guys, we know what your problem is. That water will basically start here. It's a magical new little river that we've formed somehow, druid power, you know, type shit. It's going to flow into an underground lake down there, and y'all should be good. And with that, these ashen ones look at them and they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. And they dip. And Baine turns to Garrosh with like you were saying, dog? You were saying? As Garrosh just has this look of like frustration and defeat, and he's like, let's get you back to Orgrimmar. And they all begin walking away from their victory, or whatever you want to call it. And eventually Garrosh goes to hop onto his Zeppelin. He says that he's expecting to be chastised by Baine, but Baine just reaffirms that he's committed to the Horde, and that seeing them both win is what they all really want in the end, really. And Garrosh probably just goes, humph, and flies away on his Zeppelin back to Orgrimmar. And in the aftermath of this battle, Baine receives unexpected visitors. The far wanderers who had once declared their intent to leave Mulgore admit their shame that despite Baine's encouragement, their hearts had remained troubled and that they could not believe in his word. But as they were going to leave, they had witnessed his triumph over the Quilboar, and it had restored their faith in Baine. And Baine just dismisses it, reminding them that it's easy to forgive at such a turbulent time. What is hard is working together to get stuff done. And he says, like, the Quilboar have been beaten back, but the Tauren's trials are far from over, and we're, beset from dangers on all sides, from without and within, and the only path that will get us to a brighter future is forgiveness and solidarity. as he basically, in the end of this story, promises to them that their allies will look to them for wisdom and guidance, and that his father had once made a promise to the Horde, and that he intends to deliver on that promise as well. And that is where you come to the end of Baine's short story. I'm pretty sure that is all of the short stories that we have to cover for the Cataclysm.
Wow. Now
But we do got one little tidbit at the end here, because I did throw in the Tauren starting zone. But yes, we are going to be moving on to like the Wolfheart novel, the Twilight of the Aspects novel, obviously the actual new zones that you would be experiencing, and the Cataclysm expansion and stuff like that, and those storylines. So there's a lot of huge stuff coming, but we're not quite done with this episode yet, so don't click off, because that is where you, like I've always mentioned, the Tauren player character would come into play during the Cataclysm.
Great tragedy has rocked the Tauren tribes and shaken their once stalwart devotion to the Horde. A disagreement between the new Orc Warchief, Garrosh Hellscream, and the beloved Tauren chieftain, Baine Bloodhoof, led to a duel that ended in Cairn's death. With his loss, the vile matriarch Magatha Runetotem launched a murderous attack, attempting to seize control of Thunder Bluff for herself. However, Cairn's brave son, Baine Bloodhoof, successfully repelled the attack and banished the surviving Runetotem to the farthest reaches of the land. Under Baine's hopeful leadership, the Tauren people now seek to heal their wounds and restore the balance between the various factions of the Horde. To this end, a new generation of Tauren Sunwalkers has arisen to lead their people into the light of a new dawn and the promise of rebirth. As a proud tribesman of Mulgore, you must uphold the honor of your people and safeguard the lands of your ancestors.
Look at you. There you are. And you begin doing, well, exactly what Taurens do. Apparently you start off, you have come to age for a Tauren, and they're like, it's time for you to go and become a great Tauren. And you're like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And you do all these different rites, this rite of strength where you're, ironically, as soon as you spawn in, tasked with killing, Quilboar. This is why I think this whole story is actually stupid as fuck, though, because, like, they updated it in Cataclysm, and you would think that they'd be like, okay, you're not going to fight Quilboar anymore. But no, they released this story in Cataclysm. They update Mulgore in Cataclysm, and there you are. Your very first objective is to go and slay Quilboar.
I think they multiply like rabbits, dude. You gotta take out some of the population.
So yes, you complete your rite of strength by slaying these Quilboar, this rite of courage by retrieving these stolen goods from the enemies. You do this rite of honor that culminates in you slaying the chief squealer thorn mantle, and with all of these trials complete, they're like, you've done really good. It's time for you to get on out of here. Anyway, drink this water. And you drink the water, and you go on such an acid trip that you find yourself teleported to the Bloodhoof village. And obviously, you don't know how you got there, but you only have one purpose in life as a World of Warcraft character: acquire gear. So you could keep questing. You continue making your way through the daily challenges of the Bloodhoof village. Sometimes it's generic stuff like, hey, I need you to go feed my dog. Other times it's like, hey, these gnolls are providing a problem. I need you to go turn them into powder underneath your hammer. And sometimes it's a bit more intense, because there's like, hey, the spirits of the earth are being really upset because apparently there's a bunch of dwarves from the Explorers League over here trying to look for artifacts. Go handle that. And you do. You go and you handle all the things that a good little Tauren on the come up should do. And that's where you come to the real heart of the Mulgore storyline, where the wells of Mulgore have been poisoned. And who poisoned the wells in Mulgore this time, Tim?
I'm trying to think. Harpies.
Not quite. It's those goddamn Grim Totems under the
So
guidance
now
of a...
they're actually doing it.
Yep. So Baine was onto it a little bit too early. He had a bit too much foresight, I guess I would say. And under the guidance of Amho Thunderhorn, you gather materials necessary to cleanse the wells, and you go about doing that and fighting off these Grim Totem warriors looking to stop their rise and their sabotage of your lands. Where eventually you finish up this extended quest line and you cement yourself as protector of the Tauren's heritage, and you're tasked with one final or a few final rites of passage to complete, where having cleansed the Winterhoof and Thunderhorn wells, you're sent to the Camp Sungraze, killing some more Quilboar, damn Quilboar, over in the burial grounds of your people, where you're eventually deemed by the spirits to be ready to undergo the final rite of passage, the Rite of Wisdom. And this culminates in your journey where eventually you go and you talk with the ancestors and they're like, hey, you're like a really cool Tauren. You have the blessing of the ancestors to represent Thunderbluff in these trying times. Get on out there, go slay Nixie or something, I don't know. And you then go back to Baine and you're like, hey Baine, apparently I am destined to be like that guy. What do you want me to do? And Baine is just like, oh, well, you're done with the quest chain here in Mulgore, so go to Orgrimmar. And you fly over to Orgrimmar to let him know, hey, those Grim Totems are the worst, and you have a new champion. I'm here to save the day. And that is where the Tauren story comes to an end for this episode.
Maybe for every episode.
Not quite. We got some high mountains. We got some other stuff to talk about. We'll be good. But yeah, there's not a ton. Do you have any other questions or comments concerning Baine or the Quilboar or Garrosh or anything before we wrap this up?
So Baine got his dad killed by Garrosh, and then he went and saved Garrosh. And Garrosh still doesn't like him, I assume.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I have to say, the scene where they describe him like tearing through the Quilboar Garrosh is really cool. But my gosh, he is just like inconsolable when it comes to anyone else's opinion. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yep, Garrosh once again being the greatest orc warchief to ever live, obviously.
Duh.
And now it's time to move into some, like I said, some more novels, some of the actual Cataclysm expansion, as we continue to make our way past these leader stories that we've been covering for a good while now. So I'm excited to get into that. And if you guys are excited to get into that, make sure you check us on out. But if you did make it this far in the story, please make sure you drop us a like, comment, subscribe. Any of those things would be amazing. If you're on Spotify or any of those other listening platforms, a 5-star and a follow would be greatly appreciated. If you are our biggest fan and you would like to join the tide, check us out on patreon.com/tidesoflore. But that is all that we have for you guys this week, and we will catch up with you guys next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.